Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Guess what came today? Today I got my limited edition Kringle candles. I have not bought from Kringle in a hot minute, so this is kind of a big moment. And I had to spring for these because they did a reserve line that had some botanicals in it, and I love botanicals. And these candles were super underhyped. Really underhyped, and there's a couple different reasons for that. The first one being that it's just been an onslaught of new releases and limited releases January and February. I I did flag this as a marketing problem for Kringle last year, and they have definitely not improved on that in the last couple months. I have a tally of 49 candles, and that is counting the ones that are coming out at the end of this week. 49 candles dropping January and February. That's 2 months. two months. It's way too much. Just for reference, Yankee Candle has come out with 5 in that period. Maybe a couple more than that. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been like watching super closely, but like that seems like a normal amount. I think you want to be in that like 5 to 10 candle range for 2 months, especially if they're brand new. Like 49 is insanity. Now, of those 49, many of them are repackages or returning favorites. And because Kringle has not been transparent about what all of those are, it's a little difficult to tell what the percentage is, but a whole lot of them are new candles. So we will have a moment and talk about that a little bit toward the end. But that's part of the reason why these were underhyped, because everyone was overwhelmed and they just kind of came in at a moment where there was a lot of attention being paid to the Easter candles and to the 3-wick fruit candles, and also to the vaunted spring summer candle release as well. So did not get a whole lot of attention. Also, not insignificant, and I did mention this, the brand ambassadors pretty much to a person did not buy these candles. They were not given to them in PR, and they didn't buy them. And the reasons cited were, number 1, being overwhelmed, and number 2, not being in their wheelhouse. And I said this, I think of the brand ambassadors, the Philly Candleman is the only one that I can think of that is really a botanical lover, and I kind of wish that he had been sent them at least. But I don't think anybody else sprang for them. So I'm really glad to have gotten them, to have picked them up, because there should be at least one person who's like talking about them, you know, good or bad, let's talk. So there were 5 candles in this release. I got 3 of them. The ones I did not get are the mint candle. I just wasn't interested. I'm not a huge mint person. It had eucalyptus in it too, which is another, it's another fragrance note that you kind of have to indulge with caution, I think. So to have them both in one candle, it was a lot. And also, I have the Perfect Winter from Bath & Body Works in my recent memory that has a lot of eucalyptus and peppermint, and I'm happy with that one, and I really don't need another one, no matter how lovely it is. And then the other one, which I thought about, was lavender. And lavender for me is a weird fragrance note. There are only a few lavenders that I really like. I think they can very easily go aromatherapy, which actually I don't mind. I like aromatherapy generally, but often that lavender note can just get very like harsh and medicinal. Or it can go like too sweet and floral for me. I'm not a lavender person. I'm just kind of not. Although I do think Bath & Body Works has a really nice lavender fragrance note that you see specifically in like lavender marshmallow, in lavender, pink lavender and espresso, in lavender and vanilla. I really like that lavender note, but for the most part, I'm kind of like about lavender. So I passed on that one. But then someone on Facebook, Dan Deneen calling you out down the Cape, he's a long-standing Kringle customer and fan, mentioned that that lavender candle, because he purchased it, was like, had a lot of really earthy and almost musky Halloween elements to it. Which definitely sounds like my vibe, and sounds like it might be a little bit more complex and masculine than I would have expected. So I would love to smell it, at least now I'm kind of curious, but I did not pick up lavender. So the three that I did get are this one, Graceful Fern, and I am loving this. In terms of the packaging, I have not made a secret of the fact that I'm not in love, generally speaking, with this like Kringle Reserve marketing direction. It's just very black. And unless you have a very strong black or dark component in your house, it's a little bit on the like man cave side for me. And so and I know it's meant to look like premium for the Reserve like quality. I'm not loving it. However, I do think that this really works with these botanicals, and it reminds me very much of like the Tropidelic packaging at Bath and Body Works. Like there's something about the botanical up against the black that's just so like sexy and cool, and I just love it. So anyway, I think the leaves really pop. Graceful Fern is one of them. And then another, which has kind of a similar marketing aesthetic here, is Greenleaf. And then the last one, which actually is really beautiful too, is Butterfly. Isn't that pretty? It's just really pretty, the black. I just think all three labels are really stunning, and they're just really stunning with the black motif on them. So, oh, and I also got this just on the side. I got an iced citrus wax melt because I really like iced citrus. And I had the lemon rosemary candle that I was really disappointed with, but then it just reminded me that I like this iced citrus one, and it's being discontinued, and I think they only have the wax melts, and they were like on clearance. So I had an order, and I was like, give me some iced citrus. This doesn't have good strength and throw, but I've never tried the wax melts. So I'm hoping that like maybe melting it, I can get a little bit more like in the bathroom. I don't know. Just got that. Okay, so that over. When I opened up the box, I was just super nervous. I'm like, please don't hate them. I fully expected to like really dislike one of them, but I really like all three of them. So like I am so happy right now. I don't know that any of these like blow my mind, and I have some reservations and some concerns, but I like all three of them. I was so worried that this was going to be like another, what was it, like Blue Orchid or whatever that candle, the Reserve candle from last year that was supposed to be botanical. And again, it was like a stunning like Blue Orchid on the black, but it just ended up being a men's cologne, a generic one, and very heavy. And there was bergamot and citrus and amber very like overtly in, I think, all three of these candles, but at least in two of them. And so I was so concerned that it was going to be another Blue Orchid moment and we were going to get a men's cologne. And none of them are. So I am really happy. And initially when I smelled them all, I was like, okay, we're good. We're good. I at least like them, and I at least think they're intriguing. Okay, so they are intriguing, and I'm really curious to burn because they're a little on the strange side, not necessarily in a bad way, but at least for a couple of them, I think they're going to be like kind of acquired tastes. So let's talk. I want to give credit to where credit is due. Often I throw shade about Kringle's like scent notes when they're really janky and tacky, and also sometimes their blurbs are janky and tacky. And they have like fairly developed blurbs for all three of these and fairly developed scent notes, and like they're not laughable. So I'm like happy with that. Some of them are a little basic, but it's okay. Yeah? All right, so let's start out. A couple of these are actually really similar. So Butterfly and Graceful Fern are actually very similar fragrances. They're not the same. They're certainly not the same, but they are kind of similar in their makeup. So let's talk about the one that's not, which is Greenleaf right here. And I do think actually the Greenleaf is maybe the most balanced of the three, and possibly the one that will be the most liked by general audience. I could be wrong about that. It's just like sometimes I like things that just people don't like it's not mainline. And I want to receive that, and I want to like flag that, right? I think this one would be well liked. And like I said, it's got some ranges. It's got some layers. It's got some top, it's got some base, it's got some mid, and I just think it's the most balanced and nuanced candle of the three. Maybe not the most intriguing, but at least the most balanced. So the blurb on this one is lush leafy greens and crushed botanicals layer with sweet hints of flowering verbena wrapped in dew-covered willow vines and delicate tea elements. T-E-A as in the beverage. The top notes are green. Unfortunately, we do have a little generic adjective in there. Green, herbal, bergamot. Mid notes tea. It doesn't indicate what, but I actually think maybe matcha. Citrus and verbena. Base notes are wood, green tea again, and musk. It could be a green tea, but I also think there might be some matcha in here. Ooh, it's a really interesting fragrance. It's one of those fragrances that almost, I don't know how to express this properly, but it feels a little like a fresh and clean fragrance without it being soapy. There's not soapiness in it. And even for the matcha, and I think there's some matcha in here, it would be so easy for this to go in a super powdery, soapy direction. And what I think is so intriguing about it is that it has all of the elements of fresh, clean matcha without it being dry, powdery, or soapy. Instead, it's fresh, clean matcha. There's a dewiness to it, which is, again, I think, keeping it from being powdery and from it being soapy. So there is a very like green botanical element here. There are high notes, there are mid notes, and there are even a few base notes. It's not terribly bassy candle. They say that in the bottom is wood and musk. I believe it. And it's not uber sweet. So I do think that the quote unquote wood and musk elements are giving it a little bit of like gravitas on the bottom. But I would say this is a strongly like mid-range to even like some high notes. And the high notes are because of the bergamot, I think, because of the verbena. So it says verbena, citrus, and bergamot. It's all three of those. And I'm really happy to report that the bergamot here and the citrus are not your like bergamot oil perfumey kind of notes. But as with like Harry Slatkin tends to use a bergamot that is like a true bergamot, it's a fresh, juicy bergamot as opposed to like a perfume oil. Yeah. And so it really does have an authentic citrus juicy vibe to it and keeps it from going into a perfume or cologne direction. I would say that this bergamot and citrus is not quite as fresh and juicy as the one Harry Slatkin uses, but again, is not a perfume oil. The verbena is strong. The verbena is loud, and it's giving it it's making that citrus element less sweet and more herbal. And that herbal citrus note is just perfect with the green tea element and the matcha. It like all blends together, and frankly, the entire thing comes across as a botanical conceptual. Yeah. And because of the matcha and because of the musk and the herbal direction, it does have the only thing I can call it is a conceptual. It's not fully fledged like personal fragrance, and I wouldn't say that it's a perfume conceptual per se. It's like a botanical conceptual with some perfumey and fruity elements to it. And yeah, I would say that there's enough authentic fruit and green elements, herbal elements in it for it to be considered a botanical. It reminds me, I mean, they don't smell alike, but the botanical candle that Bath and Body Works has that's in the Neutrals collection, which I haven't actually burned yet, that is what is it? It's like blue, it's the verbena and lime, blue verbena and lime one or something. Reminds me of this one to some extent. It's in that same vibe of like it being a strong botanical, but also the fillers or the elements that are kind of marrying all of the herbal botanical elements together is musky, and with the matcha too, like those elements are just giving it kind of a round, full conceptual feel without it going full personal fragrance and without it going soapy, which is no small coup. Also, they've been using matcha a lot in several of their fragrances over the last year, and to mixed reviews. I haven't actually experienced those candles with the matcha in it, but it's not gone over particularly well. I think if they did use matcha in this one, which I do think there is a matcha like nuance, they've used it so well. They really have. It mixes so well with the verbena, with the herbal elements, with the green tea. It works. It works. And it doesn't stand out and make the entire fragrance weird, powdery, like soapy. It just doesn't. It's found its like place in all of these elements that make it work. I like this candle. I do. I'm interested in burning it. And of the three, I actually think it's more green forward than the other two. And if you were concerned about the tea elements or the possible like cologne elements, it's not in here. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think it's balanced enough that a lot of people would like it. In terms of the strength and throw on this, to me, it's kind of feeling like it'll come in at a 6. I'm really hoping it's not less than that. If there was one disappointment, it is that I was hoping for a stronger on cold experience from the three of these. And at least one or two of them seem a little weaker than they should be, which worries me a bit. Partly that goes with the authenticity of a botanical element. Sometimes that means you are going to have to trade off a little bit in terms of strength and throw. So I'm okay with it, but obviously the proof will be in the burning. Okay, so the next two are actually really similar to each other. Graceful Fern and Butterfly. So let's do Graceful Fern, actually. Graceful Fern, the blurb on this one is embrace the serenity of nature's elegance with Graceful Fern. As dewy greens, delicate florals, and a soothing blend of sandalwood, tonka, and amber, interestingly, converge to create a fragrance that whispers the poetry of a peaceful forest retreat. Really a fine blurb. Your notes are, top notes, sandalwood, tonka, and amber. And we're used to seeing those actually as base notes, so it's kind of interesting that they're in the top here. Sandalwood, tonka, and amber. Mid notes, floral, jasmine, violet, and rose. So a lot of floral there. Base notes, dewy green, fresh ozone, sparkling water, and lemon. So you would kind of expect to see the top notes and the base notes reversed, which could be just a Kringle mistake. I'm not going to rule that out. You would expect to see the dewy greens, the fresh ozone, the sparkling water, and the lemon up in the high notes or in the top notes. And then you would expect to see sandalwood, tonka, and amber base notes. If it is correct and not just a mistake, I think the reason is that, as I kind of have suggested, it's not actually as green as the Greenleaf one is. And I think that this candle is much more of a perfume conceptual than it is a botanical. And not that the botanical elements are not there, but because of that, I think that's why the top notes, they're indicating here, this is more of a full like perfume vibe, which is why the sandalwood, the tonka, and the amber are like the first notes or the first sense that you get of the fragrance. It kind of makes sense. Yeah. So this one actually, even more than this one, the butterfly one. Dan, when you were talking about like that lavender candle having some like Halloween overtones to it, weirdly, this one does too a little bit, but don't get it twisted. It's primarily a floral. It sits high. It's high range. It's sweet. But I think there must be a couple elements here that Kringle goes to for some of their Halloween candles. Obviously not patchouli, but I think it's probably the ozone, the water, the green, some of the musky elements up against those. Yeah. There is a strong aquatic note here. And then it's mixed with the floral. While it says dewy greens, I'm getting less green and I am getting more just dewy. There's a real aquatic element. And almost kind of a briny aquatic element. And then there's a very warm fullness. So it is kind of a weird push and pull candle, and that you have the aquatic, which tends to lean a little bit cooler. And then you've got the really warm aspect of the sandalwood, the tonka, and the amber. And those are glowing. I mean, they're glowing. They're very warm. They're very full. And then the ozone, the sparkling water, and even the lemon with the green is like the contrary or the counterpoint to it. Yeah. So it's a really interesting combination. Not a bad one though, per se. And if you do think, and they even mention this specifically in the next candle, if you think about like sandalwood, amber, tonka being kind of more of a dry, warm component that you would associate more with like beachy sand, right? And then you have the ocean, which has that like really aquatic element. That's kind of the conjunction of the two together, is like that warm, like dry kind of quality, along with this like wet, cool kind of element too. And then the floral, the floral is there, and there is a strong floral dimension, but I can't say that any one of these floral notes come out as like rose. I'm not necessarily getting rose. It is kind of a generic floral. I would say it leans a little white floral. Yeah, I would say a little bit more white, but I think the violet and the rose are keeping it from being like a true white floral. To be honest, it's really the collision between the sandalwood and the amber and those aquatic elements together that is giving it like a very... And then there is a sparkling element too. And yeah, there is the lemon. Yeah, that is giving it the sparkling higher notes. This candle sits higher. And that's another reason why they may have put sandalwood, tonka, and amber up in the top notes. This is not a bassy candle. It's up in here. Yeah, it's mid-range. And it's kind of coming at you at exactly the same point. This one doesn't have as many layers as the Greenleaf one does. It's atmospheric. I would say it's a perfume conceptual because of the amber and the tonka and the sandalwood, but it has a strong botanical element to it and a strong aquatic element to it. It's really interesting. I go back and forth, by the way. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I like this one the best. And then I will like change my mind. Yeah. So they're all interesting, and they all have elements to like, and also elements that kind of like give you pause a little bit. All right, so let's go to the last one, which is Butterfly. I do think this one might be a little bit mismarketed, a little misnamed, and that should be obvious as I read the blurb. So blurb starts, embrace the butterfly, which is kind of weird. Embrace the butterfly, where cool, I'm sorry, I can't read my writing. Where cool sea spray meets subtle citrus splashes, surrounded by the soothing aura of aquatic florals, lush seagrass, and hints of ocean driftwood and warm amber sands, evoking the tranquil beauty of a seaside garden. Do you see why I think it might be a little mismarketed? Where's the butterfly? Where's the butterfly? The only mention of it is this like seaside garden that I guess where there's flowers and there's a garden, there could be a butterfly. Yeah. But it might make more sense if this candle was like seahorse or coral, a la the coral candle that is in the new spring line that apparently does not really smell like anything beachy or ocean-like. Yeah. I think this would be a good coral candle. Yeah. Also, do you see why there might be elements in common with this one? So let's read off the notes. Top notes, cool sea spray, sunlit By the way, the notes on this one are exactly where you would expect them to be. Cool sea spray, sunlit citrus, mid notes, blue lotus, lush seagrass, beach lily, base notes, warm amber sands, and ocean driftwood. So do you see why, even on paper, you would assume there would be a lot of similarities here? Here you have warm amber sands, whereas in the fern one, you had sandalwood, tonka, and amber. So 6 or half dozen. You've got ocean driftwood in the butterfly, but you have like the sandalwood in the graceful fern, right? Then in terms of florals, you have blue lotus and beach lily, And then you have the combined florals in the other one of jasmine, violet, rose, and quote unquote floral generic. You have seagrass in this butterfly one, whereas you have dewy green, whatever that is, in the Graceful Fern. And then you have cool sea spray in the butterfly with sparkling water and ozone in the Graceful Fern. And then you have sunlit citrus in butterfly and lemon in Graceful Fern. So I know that was a lot, but basically I was just comparing all point to point. There is negligible difference, and point to point, every single note in each one of them is kind of finding its pair in, there's an echo of it in the next fragrance. So, and they do smell fairly similar. The perfume makeup, the fragrance profile of both of them is very similar. They are different, don't get me wrong. So this one is a little bit, this one that I just talked about with the Graceful Fern, it's a little warmer and it sits a little bit higher. And it almost has, it has an aquatic element to it. It almost has a melon-like quality, as in the fruit, a melon. And I think that's like the sparkling water, the ozone, the green, the lemon up against the floral. It's giving it kind of like a green melon component almost. Whereas here with butterfly, this one is sharper. It's less round, it's less full. It's a little less warm and maybe a little bit more herbal. And I think that may be because of the seagrass. The seagrass with the driftwood and the spray. Again, it's aquatic. This one sits a little bit lower. It's mid-range. It's mainly mid-range. Again, I think the first one, Greenleaf, is the most layered and the most balanced. It seems to be able to hit all three ranges at least a little bit, whereas this one is, I would say, just solidly mid. This one is mid to high. Yeah, this is herbal. It's briny. But I'm definitely getting, again, that like perfumed element, which is coming from the amber and the amber sands. Yeah, it's just thinner and sharper. So the citrus is, the sunlit citrus, so just a little bit, it's a little bit more obvious here with the seagrass. Sorry, I'm not, like, I feel like I'm just doing a bad job describing these because I really think that you almost have to smell them, you know? But I'm trying to do as well as I can, especially, I feel pressure because I'm like the only one describing them. I wish there were other people who could give their take too. I would say that both of these, which are very similar, I would call them perfume conceptuals that have heavy aquatic and botanical elements in them. But because both of them have that like amber sandalwood component, these two seem very, I mean, they're not quite personal fragrance because they just have too much like aquatic and botanical elements in them. And it's not just floral, it's like green, or in the case of butterfly, like seagrassy, yeah? So I don't know that you would want to like wear any of this, but it is kind of a perfume conceptual. What I love is that all three are conceptuals, and I think Kringle does conceptuals really well. And I've not been seeing as many strong or complicated or unique conceptuals from them in the last year or year and a half. I feel like they're doing a lot of really basic stuff, yeah, and a lot of basic gourmands. But even when they stray from gourmands, like they're not doing like super complicated fragrances with a lot of depth or originality. And I just think these three are like unique. They do seem a little on the weak side, and frankly, at least maybe with the exception of Greenleaf, but these two, as much as I like these other two, they do seem a little incomplete to me. And that goes with like they're kind of at one, they're firing at like one range, one level. And I really think there needs to be greater depth and greater development of both of them. But I don't know. I have to burn it and see. We'll see. Maybe upon it being burned, they're perfect where they are and they're a developed enough concept, you know, and they hold their own as a fragrance. I am a little concerned that they seem a little bit like they're waiting for something else to layer, some other element to pop. They're like, you know, a fragrance note or two shy of being brilliant. But I'm just so happy that these three candles are, this is what I'm used to expecting from Kringle in terms of complexity and originality. Well, maybe not complexity, but originality. And yeah, I really like it. And I think I think that's just very solidly in the old school kind of Kringle mode. And I appreciate the fact that there's strong botanical elements in all three, even if they're not like through and through botanicals. Yeah. And I do think these are interesting with the push and pull of the aquatic and the amber sandalwood, which I don't mind. But it's, yeah. I think of all three of them, okay, I really like, disclaimers. This may not be true. I'm just like conjecturing. If I had to conjecture, I would suspect that Greenleaf would be the most popular and the most, to me, it's the most mainline. It's the sweetest. Yeah, I think it's the most balanced. So I think that this one will be liked the best by folks who are wanting to try something. I would say Graceful Fern next, I think would be the most popular. It's a little sweeter than Butterfly is. And like I said, there's a melon-like quality to it and also something kind of musky and earthy that does seem reminiscent of successful notes that have been used in some of the more fall or Halloween candles. So I think that this one would be the second most popular, but also I think the weakest of the three in terms of strength. And then Butterfly, I think would be the most acquired taste. It's just sharper. It's sharper and it's more mineral and I think, but I could be wrong. And I don't want to like sway you in the wrong direction. These are expensive candles. I get it. You know what I mean? But I'm really happy. I'm just happy for a few candles that make me pause. You know? Like I haven't smelled this before. Do I like it? It's taking me to a space. It's taking me to a place. Yeah. Like that's what I want Kringle to do, you know? Give something that's not like something I could get from Bath & Body Works, you know? Although Bath & Body Works is getting better about giving us some candles that are not in their traditional range. So my respect for Bath & Body Works has definitely grown, and I think at this point they are kind of the ones to beat. They have been very smart about the way that they stay close to the things that they do really well. That's kind of their bread and butter. And then also taking some risks and working outside of their comfort zone in ways that are smart and savvy and impressive. All right, so that's what I've got for you on those three. I don't regret any of them, so I'm really happy with that. And even the two that are similar, the Butterfly and the Graceful Fern, if I smelled them in the store, the chances are very high I would end up buying both of them, even though they are very close to each other, because they are still quite different from each other at the same time. So they're definitely not dupes, and I would probably buy all three. So gotta be happy with that. Just really briefly, unpopular opinion coming at you in 3, 2, one. I am not impressed with the upcoming spring summer line. And I think that last year's spring summer line was stronger. And I didn't even think that last year's was like mind blowing, but it had some range, it had some diversity, and I thought that it was, yeah. I don't think this one is quite as good. So this one is coming out at the end of this week. The brand ambassadors have gotten these, so there has been some buzz, actually a lot of buzz. I'm least impressed with the country line, which is Sand and Santal. And I appreciate that it's not a gourmand, but from what I can gather, it is a dupe for Sea and Sand from Yankee Candle. I don't like it when, and I've been seeing a lot of it recently, of Kringle just duping other people's candles. They don't need to do that. They, all right. Sand and Santal. Also, I don't like Sea and Sand from Yankee Candle, so I'm not interested. I've gotten a lot of like, if you like a candle that smells like sunscreen, don't get me wrong. If you like a candle that sounds like sunscreen, that's fine. But there's been a lot of that. Like some of their candles that they released earlier this year were like really generic, tropical sunscreen kind of candles, a la Bath and Body Works. I get those candles from Bath and Body Works. I definitely don't need to get them from Kringle, right? Sandy and Santal, strawberry lemonade. But we had strawberry lemonade last year. And I know that there's some confusion as to whether or not, I think it's a different strawberry lemonade. But even if it is a different strawberry lemonade, like why would we take up a coveted spot in this collection for strawberry lemonade? Okay. Same with cake pops. I feel like we've had a lot of cake pop candles recently. And I know it's different than the one that was holiday, which was like 4 months ago, right? But we've got another cake pop candle. Do we need another cake pop candle right now? I don't know. If they were going to do a cake pop candle, I think we can all agree, though, that they should have reversed the cake pops. So the cake pop that's very lemon forward should be the one that they're releasing in the spring summer line rather than in the Christmas season where everybody was like, why are we getting a lemon cake pop for Christmas, right? So it would make much more sense in the spring and summer, and then they could have just done the like generic cake pop one for the holiday season. So maybe they're trying to make up for the problem of having lemon at Christmas, but it just seems redundant. Again, charred pineapple. We've had a lot of pineapple candles recently, like a lot. Do we need a charred pineapple? Could we have put that in like the fruit 3-wick candle situation if we had to do another pineapple? But honestly, there are so many people that like don't like pineapple candles among the brand ambassadors and just across the board, I think. Pineapple candles are kind of acquired taste, and you don't see a ton of pineapple candles in Bath & Body Works catalog, in Yankees catalog, and Homeworks. There's a reason for that. Why do we have another pineapple candle? Then we have cotton flowers, which seems very polarizing. So I have no idea what to think about that one. Because there's some people that are like, oh, this is really intriguing and great, you know? And there's other ones that are like, this is a menthol cough drop. I can't tell what's going on with that one. And then the one in here that actually does seem like it's a solid one that I would keep in that makes sense in this collection is lemon tea and rose. Kringle does do a lot of tea fragrances, but they are very popular. I'm not a tea person, and I'm definitely not a lemon tea person. And I'm not a rose person either. So this is like not a candle for me, but I think it makes sense in a spring summer collection. And I think it's being very well received by the brand ambassadors. They all seem to like it a great deal and think that it's very beautiful. So I think that that's the only one that seems impressive or at least deserving of being in a new country candle rotation. Then we have on the Kringle side, Sage and Palo Santo, which many people have saying, why is this not a fall release rather than a spring one. And I do agree with that, with the exception being that I do think like desert-like fragrances are kind of nice in the early part of the year. And I talked about this when I talked about the releases of Yankee Candle this year, where they had the desert moment, which I'm going to review in a couple days. So I think, and also Palo Santo and Sage from Bath and Body Works has been on the floor for this season as well. And I think it's totally fine. It works. It kind of has like a spa dimension to it, a new year, like let's sage, let's clarify, let's purify, let's center. So I actually think that it, like marketing wise, can work. But I do think that it seems, even on the face of it, redundant of Palo Santo and Sage from Bath and Body Works, which is a big push for them right now. And I do think that Kringle needs to work on not even being perceived as duping other people's fragrances right now, because we're seeing a lot of that. And I think it makes them look like the well is running dry in terms of creativity. And they shouldn't feel that way. It shouldn't be perceived that way. And I don't think that Kringle should go in that direction and compete with other companies by duping their products. For a whole host of reasons, I don't think that it's a good strategy. Also, that Sage and Palo Santo from early reports is more men's cologne-y, whereas the Palo Santo and Sage from Bath and Body Works is very authentic, very pure, very herbal, very woody, without the body care component, it's kind of ironic because Bath and Body Works tends to, like in a gratuitous fashion, add the body care element. With Palo Santo and Sage, they really haven't. Palo Santo and Sage is shaping up to be one of my favorite candles from Bath and Body Works, so I kind of feel a certain way about it. And I suspect I'm not going to like Sage and Palo Santo from Kringle quite as well. Coral, which is also like very strange because it apparently has no beachy or ocean kind of nuances to it, and instead is like a very like laundry day kind of scent. Eucalyptus and cotton, which is similar, but actually a little bit more herbal. And also eucalyptus and cotton seems redundant, at least in a marketing way, to cotton flowers in the country line. So again, just redundant. Gardenia, which I think is a repackage. It's a returning favorite, so it shouldn't even be in this collection, which is supposed to be new, or at least that's the way it was traditionally was. These are new offerings, new fragrances, as opposed to returning favorites. I think it would be fine for Kringle to do like again, they can reduce, they need to reduce the number of new candles. So I would be very happy if they did like 4 new Kringle, 4 new country, and then another 4, you can keep it 12, another 4 returning favorites. Let's go back to the vault. Let's bring some stuff out from spring, summer that we haven't seen for several years, right? I think that would be a fantastic way of doing it. And I think it would give them an opportunity to really hone in on the 8 new candles and make sure that they are really excellent, original, thoughtful, like, you know, they fill a niche, like, etc. And then you've got 4 that everybody's really happy to see because they haven't seen X for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah? And that way it gives you still 12 candles, but they're not all new and it's not quite as overwhelming, right? Then we have the 2 super gourmands, Bananas Foster and Ice Cream Sandwiches. I mean, those 2 candles are just not for me, so I don't want to be overly negative. Ice Cream Sandwiches does seem to be like not only very popular from early reports, but also like kind of novel because it's got a coconut element in it, which is not something you would expect of an ice cream sandwich candle. Bananas Foster doesn't have any booze in it. So I'm confused by that. But it seems to be a good banana candle and a good like caramel brown sugar candle. So God bless. But I do kind of think that that's a missed opportunity because I think that the rum would like take it to the next level. Yeah. Yeah, so generally speaking, I think it's a weaker collection than the spring collection was last year. They could have strengthened it. There were a few, when they did that random like country limited edition collection in like late January, there were some spring-ish candles in there that I think would be very welcome in this list. So the one Rainy Day, but I do think that Rainy Day is actually a returning favorite, a la my conversation that I just had. So Rainy Day and Gardenia would be great ones to offer as returning favorites in this collection. But then like Cape House, for instance, was I think a beachy floral. I think Cape House should be in this list somewhere and take one of the more redundant ones out. Cotton Flowers or Strawberry Lemonade or something like that, put Cape House in, right? And even Caribbean Beach, which kind of seems like a very ho-hum, very generic beach fragrance, but even that might be welcome in this list. Although you've got the sand and the Santal, but you don't have like a tropical fruit one, with the exception of charred pineapple. I don't know. It seems a little like, well, I know for some of you I'm preaching to the choir, and I don't want to be like overly negative, but I'm seeing a lot of like marketing missteps here in these 2 months. And I really hope the Kringle kind of rights itself, but it's too much. It's too much, and I question some of these choices. And one of the things that comes about when you're doing too much is you're not doing it as well. And so it becomes very tempting then to just dupe other stuff, to offer like fairly basic stuff, fairly redundant stuff. Like that's how Bath & Body Works does this. They have a different clientele, they have a different corporate footprint, and they have brick and mortar stores. There's a whole host of reasons why Bath & Body Works does get away with that, and frankly should get away from it. Should get away with it. It is like absolutely a reputable marketing strategy if it's done in a certain environment with a certain set of circumstances. Yeah? Kringle is not, doesn't have that footprint, doesn't have that clientele, just doesn't. It's not analogous. And so this marketing strategy, I think, is not a good one. Yeah. But I've had this conversation before, so no need to belabor. I'm really happy about these three. And I do think now that we've got the spring and summer that will be out of the way here in the next like few days, hopefully we don't see any other like collections for a little bit. Like maybe it'll calm down and we can all catch our breath. I'm hoping. Here's hoping. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. I'm going to link these three down below. And I do recommend them to you, especially if you're kind of an old school Kringle fan who likes it when they do the really creative conceptuals, because I think that this is definitely in that category. And if you like botanicals and if you like kind of amber, warm amber and or aquatic kind of conceptuals, I think this is probably something you want to check out. But definitely at least use a brand ambassador discount. And more if you can. I used a 25% off because I reviewed a candle. So that helped somewhat, but it's an investment. I mean, it was like $100, all three of them. So it's a lot for 3 candles. But I really like Kringle when they like nail it, when they do what they do best. So these are little baby steps and I'm here for it. That's what I've got for you, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it was a long one. Next video, I believe, will be Yankee Candle. So I have burned through all of the Yankee candles that I've been burning for the last couple months, and I'm prepared to have a conversation. That one will probably be lengthy as well, and I will catch you in that one. Thanks, friends.